Well, hello everyone. Thank you for those of you who are online and tuning in, and for those of you who are here in person. Today, I will take you on to a journey entitled Into the Metaverse, and it really doesn't matter if you have any understanding or not. I will dive into the fundamentals of what the metaverse is, how we would define it today, the current developments we see with brands that are actively participating in this development, and how this would mean in our daily lives. So before I get in, I'll introduce myself. My name is Tim. I work for the Zipmex Incubation and Ventures team, where we develop new products for our company, and I'm leading the Metaverse initiatives. So without further ado, I will get right into the message. So the agenda for today is the what. We like to define firstly what the metaverse is, and then we'll get into the who, meaning the brands that are entering into the metaverse already and what they're doing, and finally the how. How does this impact our daily lives? I'm sure many of us are wondering as we hear a lot about the metaverse. Facebook's name change to Meta, Bill Gates talking about having, our office, our workspace, all of it incorporated into the metaverse, and all the other buzz that I'll go through that the metaverse has been garnering throughout. So as we get into this, hopefully we'll leave with an understanding of what the metaverse is and where we see the metaverse going in the near future. So we'll start with the what. So what is the metaverse? As more of our lives are spent online, it's becoming harder and harder to distinguish what is real life and what is our digital life that's lived online. The metaverse is actually where your physical and your digital persona become a unified reality. This is a quote by one of the thought leaders in this space named Alexander Fernandez, the CEO and founder of Streamline Media Group. So as we come to think of the metaverse, I wouldn't think of it as so much a separate space that we're spending online, but rather a mesh or a weaving together of our physical and digital personas. Because, as I mentioned, so much of our time is spent online and so much of our identity is defined by what we do online. And these are a few concise words that I would use to describe. Much of this is quoted from Matthew Ball, a prominent VC and essayist in this metaverse space. And the way he thinks about the metaverse is, to start off with the first word, persistent. This just goes on and on. The metaverse is not just a place you turn off and turn on, but rather you can move from place to place, a continuous kind of existence. The metaverse is also reactive, where you react in real time. It's not, you're doing something and then someone else comes and does something in siloed ways, but rather all of this is happening and reacting in real time. It's interoperable, meaning you would own all your assets in digital form and be able to carry from one metaverse onto the next metaverse, so on and so forth. So it wouldn't just be one ecosystem. It wouldn't just be one platform, but rather a whole ecosystem in which the metaverse is interwoven into. It's creative, and this is also user-defined, meaning as users are spending more time on the metaverse, they have the liberty to create and to define the way they want the metaverse to look. This is especially true in decentralized metaverses. It's everyday, it's limitless, and it's social also. So meaning a lot of our everyday life will be woven into it. There's really no limit as to what you can do on there or what you can't do. And then finally, it's a sociable place where your social lives will even be taken on there, where you can have very meaningful interactions with limitations that you would have in the physical realm. So with that in mind, I would also like to introduce another idea that is crucial to our understanding the metaverse, especially a decentralized metaverse, which is the idea of NFTs. I'm sure many of us have heard of NFTs, or known as non-fungible tokens. These are pieces of digital collectibles that you're able to track the ownership through the blockchain technology. And what the NFTs and the metaverse really come together is it builds out a whole ecosystem. When we live in the metaverse, we utilize our NFTs to represent who we are, represent ownership of what we own, and really defines our social identity in the digital sphere. So as you would in the physical realm own a pair of Nikes or a Gucci bag, in the digital realm, you would have NFTs to show the different kind of possessions that you own. So this is a very crucial idea that we would have to keep in the back of our minds as we think about the metaverse and NFTs. These two things are really coming together. And I would say even the NFT is a building block for the metaverse. So what exactly are NFTs? Of course, the realm of NFTs go beyond just merely artworks, the avatars and memes that we're all very familiar with, your CryptoPunks, Bored Ape Yacht Club, so on and so forth. It also can mean real world assets, things with utility in the real world like event tickets, music ownership, media ownership, and then many items in the gaming sphere that perhaps some of us are already into. So really NFTs are very versatile. So they're not just limited to what we know. Actually, it can be done with a lot of things. But for the purposes of this speech, well, we will just think about NFTs as a building block of a metaverse or a digital collectible that you can showcase in the metaverse. So now that we've spoken about the metaverse, maybe one question is asked is, okay, so who's in the metaverse? Why is it so important? I pulled together the headlines, or this is just the headlines for these past 2 months, the brands that are actively entering into this space. On the top left, you see Morgan Stanley. It estimates that the metaverse is an $8 trillion opportunity in just China alone. So I've seen estimates up to $15 trillion in a global economy. But this goes to say, the way big brands, then the future is, how we think about the future of the metaverse is that there's a huge opportunity here. And hopefully the rest of this presentation will develop why this is the case. We see UFC is trying to host a fight there. Nintendo is leveraging a lot of intellectual property, the rights that it owns, to create a new environment for digital engagement. Apple is setting its sight on the metaverse, and in response to that, stocks really soared. Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard for $68 billion. And like I mentioned just now, Bill Gates, his bold prediction is that meetings will be moving on to the metaverse within the next 3 years. So this really tells us it's a race. Every company is building out something very cool, interesting, engaging for our rising class of digital native consumers, as perhaps some of us are. As we spend more times online, these things would mean more and more to us as this becomes a primary form of our engagement. One case study I chose to point out early on in this presentation is this Dolce & Gabbana collection. I'm sure most of you here are quite familiar, as my audience is mostly female here. Dolce & Gabbana, high fashion brand, right? And I'm sure we all love their designs. And would anyone ever question you for spending maybe tens of thousands of dollars for buying a Dolce & Gabbana bag? I'm asking my audience. No? Okay, that's what I thought. So, the bag itself, maybe it costs a fraction of that to produce, to source your materials, craftsmanship, all of that. Maybe it's only a fraction of that. But the price it's sold for is determined by the market. The market thinks it's worth this price, so it's worth this price, and no one questions it. So in the same way, you can say the same about NFTs. When you own a piece of NFT, in this case, if you own a piece of Dolce & Gabbana NFT, it gives you social currency, or what you would call a social representation of who you are online. It makes you feel a certain way. It makes people look at you a different way. You own this piece, it defines who you are to some degree. So in the same way, as we see here in this case study, the highest piece that was sold, the most expensive piece that was sold was $1.3 million. And then the lowest sale was $0.3 million. All 9 of them were auctioned within 5 days, which was the collection was set for these 5 days. And some of these come with very interesting ideas where they have custom tailored physical counterparts. So meaning you own a digital NFT and you'll be entitled to a physical piece for whoever the owner is. So what does this really mean? Is as we're learning to educate or we're interweaving this idea of owning your physical collectibles into a digital form and even owning both at the same time, this will really give credibility to what NFTs are. And this will really form the future of the way we think about NFTs. So as we own these NFTs, it'll start to define who we are in the metaverse when we own, already now we know the Bored Ape Yacht Clubs. We have A-list celebrities who own them because it, brings them into this exclusive society and it defines who they are to a certain extent in their social and online presence. So with that in mind, I will also bring up this other example. Nike acquired Artifact. Artifact was what you call a native metaverse modeling company that started off with modeling shoes in the metaverse. So they weren't very big, they did some very cool stuff. And then when Nike saw the opportunity was ripe, it acquired it just to make sure that, it could be ahead of the technology curve and be able to create its own sneakers in a metaverse in a very seamless way with this group of very talented individuals. So this goes to say, I'm sure we all own a pair of Nikes here. It goes to say now that we own our physical pairs, what makes you think we won't own our digital pair? Because it makes us feel a certain way. We believe in the brand, we believe in its mission. So very much we will own both. I see the future as owning both the physical and digital equivalent, or even just owning the digital piece itself, even if we don't want the physical piece, because it defines who we are in the digital realm. So now that I mentioned who's in the space, what metaverse, so what does this mean for our daily lives? A lot of this can be just news to us, but I would say it's actually creeping into our lives a lot quicker than we think or know. The 4 ways I'll break it down into is how we define meta lives, meta spaces, meta business or businesses, and meta societies. So let's get into the first one, the first pillar. We see here meta lives. How are daily habits being transplanted into the digital realm, giving rise to our extended selves and extended lifestyles? Again, the same point, virtual possessions. Because I took time to talk about Dolce & Gabbana, maybe I won't belabor this point. But what we see here is there's a huge opportunity here of having both the digital and physical goods for brands to really take this route going forward. Brands are selling very well, especially a lot of high fashion brands in the physical realm. But a lot of them are looking, like Louis Vuitton, it worked with League of Legends to come up with, pieces that are very cool on the game itself. Balenciaga also did the same thing. And then the Fortnite version of Balenciaga sold out so quickly that they noticed people were really interested, and they started building physical pieces in response to their digital pieces. So it goes to tell you how engaged people are in the digital realm and how much traction they were gaining. We see Tesla, it's doing product placement in this 10-cent game of peace. And a lot of other brands, Zara and these many more that I don't have time to mention. But this really shows us virtual possessions are actually taking off, and people are treating this very seriously and assigning value to it. So the next one, meta spaces. Traditional spaces are no longer the way that we define them to be, but rather in a virtual realm, we're redefining how we can use these virtual spaces. So one big example that's very big in the music space right now is the way that artists are engaging their audience. So the way artists engage their audience in the newest way, I would say, is these online metaverse concerts. Think about all the big names: Justin Bieber, John Legend, Ariana Grande, Travis Scott. All of these names have hosted millions and millions of people on different metaverses, just to go to say that people no longer just define a virtual space for a certain purpose, but rather the way they're defining these spaces and utilizing these spaces are becoming very creative. And the reason why I believe many of these artists are engaging their fans in this new way is because they aren't able to tour or host concerts in real life because of COVID right now. So they're pioneering new ways, borderless ways, seamless ways to get people online and to really engage with them. And the metaverse has really pioneered and opened up this realm for many, not just artists, but even in the future, brands to engage their user base, and especially this digital native user base that we care very much about, because it will be the rising class of consumers. And then the next one is meta businesses. So this can be very, very broad, but I will narrow it down to retail frontiers and gamevertising. So as some of you may heard already, Gucci built their Gucci Garden on Roblox. We see Balenciaga has its own game world where it utilizes the advertising space to brand their own products too. So, it's kind of double advertising in this space. And many other big brands, people are getting really far-fetched, get into this space. So what we see here is not just a channel where you would use social media, your traditional ways of advertising digitally, but even opening up a space, a 3D space where a person's avatar can go and engage in a very organic and intimate way, even with different items that model after the real life items. And the goal here is not necessarily to convert users on the spot to get them to buy something, but it's to engage them in a meaningful way where they would remember your brand, where they would think highly of your brand, or they would have an association with the brand in a digital realm, which will ultimately, I believe, lead to more physical conversion. So once the awareness is there and the engagement is there, conversion will naturally trickle in. And I believe this is the way many brands see it, which is why we see even food brands, McDonald's, Panera, buying up spaces in the metaverse, although it's obvious to us that you can't have a physical meal on there. So that really is the future of meta businesses. And finally, I'll come to this point of meta societies, where we can consider it a borderless social network. So as we know today, our social networks are very much limited to where we are physically. We make friends in a physical space. For example, I recently moved to Thailand, and I'm meeting a lot of people in Thailand, and that's kind of the way I'm engaging them. And then, of course, this can be taken another layer into the social network, where we can continue to meet with people, but perhaps in quite a limited way. But what the metaverse really opens up for us is a kind of engagement that will be very different, because people of like minds can now flock to this same space and engage each other in a more meaningful way than just merely engage with a post on Instagram or just a like or comment, but rather you can do activities, you can sit down, frame it in a way where you see one another's avatars. It's more personable and intimate. And this metaverse is really built out for purposes that allow, a kind of social network of flocking together of like-minded people to come together. So there's, no restriction of space. There's no restriction of different time zones. Whoever is on there can connect in a very seamless way. Finally, another very revolutionary idea, which I was very surprised by when I saw, was the government administration of Seoul, Korea, has taken its next steps to provide services on the metaverse. So many administrative services will progressively be brought on. It's devoting about $33 million to deploy this project by 2026. So this is, serious stuff. This is not just social lifestyle. This is actually administrative, and even the way we define society. More and more, it'll be woven into the metaverse, and we'll see a lot of mainstream adoption, not just by lifestyle brands, but even by governments. So the key takeaways I have for you guys is these 3 points. The metaverse is a new ecosystem of virtual living. This is something that we will define together. It's not set in stone the way it is. But as we spend more and more time online, we will define this, how we interact with one another, with the metaverse, with this space, with this technology as a whole. And there'll be many new opportunities for brands, for creators to utilize this. The second being, it's an extension of our physical identity. We won't just only care about who we are physically, but even our digital identity. That's why the digital collectibles, the NFTs, all these are very important, because this will define who we are in the digital space in the metaverse. Finally, a new economy. So this is shared ownership. So it's not a brand or any one single entity who will define how all of this will look. Rather, it would be how we all make it to be. And this is part of the beauty of these decentralized metaverses, is that we all own a piece of it and we all define a piece of it. So this will come together as not just one entity dictating the direction, but rather we all would dictate the direction of how a metaverse is built out. So with that, I will end my presentation here, and I will open up for questions that I may or may not be able to respond to.